Are you in tech and are considering offers between moving to a company in Seattle or in the Bay Area? You may have heard rumors of what life is like living in both, but having traveled to Seattle for business over 10 times in the last several years, it's important to me to help others understand why people would choose one over the other. Now, I'm not going to be making any personal opinions about whether you should choose one or another, but I want to lay out the facts for you. Hi, I'm Spencer Su, and in this series, I'm going to be doing a comparison of the Bay Area versus other cities that are often considered when top talent wants to choose a location. So, should you move to Bay Area or to Seattle? Let's break it down and compare it by several different categories. Let's talk about sports. Now, both areas have good sports. Head-to-head, the Giants and the A's for baseball have more titles than the Mariners. Seattle doesn't have a basketball team anymore to compete with against the Warriors. For soccer, Seattle has the Sounders, which has done very, very well for several different times, while the Bay Area has the San Jose Earthquakes. When it comes to hockey, the Sharks are better historically than the Krakens. And for football, there's always this continuous rivalry behind the Seahawks and 49ers. And now that Russell Wilson is no longer at the Seahawks, we'll see how things continue to play out. Now, let's talk about the downtown areas. Now, both areas of these downtowns are actually greatly impacted by homelessness. Now, we all see all the different things happening above San Francisco, which has been reported way more in the media. But to be fair, downtown Seattle has a lot of challenges too. There's a reason why a lot of people have been moving away from there, no different than San Francisco. So it is something to be mindful of. Now, that being said, the downtown areas are pretty big. So it's not like the entire population or the entire metro of the downtown area is all that bad. San Jose still has multiple bridges that goes into the downtown area. So you have lots of the waterfront, you have lots of the piers that are excellent in San Francisco. Seattle, on the other hand, love their Pike Market, lots of great food options there and drinking options, Pioneer Square, and they have much more ferries than we do here in the Bay Area. One thing that they do extremely well is that system because it's very reliable and connects Seattle to islands all over the area. Now, when it comes to public transportation, which is always a question of concern, the Bay Area does have some good options when it comes to BART and Caltrain as long as you're living close to around those lines. For Seattle area, not as much. They could been going through a building that line that goes into the downtown Seattle corridor for a long time now. But for the most part, it's pretty safe to say, unless you're living in downtown San Francisco, you're probably going to be needing a car. Now let's talk about jobs. So both cities are really big tech hubs. So while Seattle is home to the headquarters of Amazon and Microsoft, in the Bay Area, you've got Google, Apple, Meta, a lot more enterprise companies like Salesforce, Netflix, and much more VC-backed firms. And you also have a very big biotech corridor, especially in South San Francisco and the peninsula. So you have more options in the Bay Area, but make no mistake, a lot of companies are in both of those places. So a lot of people in Microsoft or Amazon are down in the Bay Area because of talent, and vice versa with Google and Apple and these others, so they can have a presence and take talent from others in those locations. Now, that being said, what's next important is about income. Seattle has no income tax, which is incredible. Now, a lot of companies, though, to be fair, have already adjusted for that. So if you actually compare on like salary.com, Bay Area employees earn about 14.3% more in the same jobs than employees in Seattle. It's a few percent more than the income tax that you would have otherwise been paying for. Now, since tech firms often change their pay based on the cost of living, expect to be paid more for your job if you live in the Bay Area than if you live in Seattle. You tend to also have more job opportunities because the Bay Area is larger and there's much more dynamics of the Bay Area than Seattle would have, but there's plenty of people that are doing extremely well at those larger firms. Now, what about the food options? Now, what's really unique and neat about the Bay Area is that it has way more diversity than almost anywhere else in the country besides, let's say, New York. There's a high concentration of people from different areas of the world throughout the Bay Area. So as talent from across the world, especially those in tech, flock here, this means you can really go on this like world tour of culture and cuisine and food. It means just really about everyone can find their own niche. I mean, one of the newer trends that hasn't been around for a while is like Nepalese food. Right, you have momos everywhere. For a long time, those were not relevant other than like xiaolongbao. Now, the Bay Area has a high concentration of Michelin-starred restaurants, and as I mentioned, some of the best Asian food in the country. And so while Seattle has amazing seafood, generally you're going to have more diverse options in the Bay Area. And people that live there can always attest to that, because when they come here, they always try to get Asian food. Let's talk about the cost of living in real estate. So really it's about housing and taxes. Before we look at housing, we do need to look at the populations to try to compare similar areas, since this is where people make inaccurate assessments. Every area has very expensive areas, so you can always cherry pick those areas. But the Bay Area population is nearing about 8 million people across about 6,900 square miles, while the population of Seattle is about half of that, about 4.4 million, stretching about 5,800 square miles. So you can see the density of people in the Bay Area is higher. It's not like it's packed, but it is higher. And so we will kind of look at some of the more prime areas where there's a lot more jobs. So the two main counties people may consider is like King County in Seattle versus like San Mateo County. So the average price as of right now in King County is $820,000 versus in San Mateo County, it's at $1.529 million. Now these are the most expensive counties. Of course, if you go to the counties nearby, like Bay Area, Santa Clara, Alameda, Contra Costa, it is significantly less. It won't be as high as San Mateo County, but it'll be a little bit less. Now, what about taxes? So the real X factor here is that Washington state residents and businesses pay no state income tax. So in California, we have different income tax brackets from as low as 1% to 12.3%, depending on how much you would earn. Here's a chart so you can see and know what to expect depending on your income. And the other thing is property taxes in the Bay Area are going to be higher. It's at about 1.25% a year. Now we have something that's very beneficial, which is called Proposition 13. This caps how much it can increase a year at 2% max. This is why many homeowners that have lived here for decades pay very, very low taxes, as it's not based off of what the value is or assessed at today. That's very, very important. Now for Seattle, the average property tax, and this is not for the newest homes with like any sort of mellow roofs type of situations, that's around 0.78%. On a more expensive home, like if you go up to certain dollar amounts, it does increase to up to 0.9%. So that is something that is material for people to factor in. Now the next thing that's probably the most important thing when it comes to lifestyle is weather-wise. Now we know Seattle as this gloomy, rainy capital of the US, and it doesn't like pour all the time, but it's like always drizzling. But did you know that it rains more by volume in many places on the East Coast than it does in Seattle, even though it rains in Seattle around 200 days a year? The key, as you can see, is the volume of yearly rain is relatively low at 38 inches. It's equal to the average rainfall for a city in the US. It's just more of a constant mist, so it's just constantly gloomy and has overcast. Now in the Bay Area, like we beat the US average for sunny days just per year with around 250 sunny days. The US average, just to give you an idea, is about 200 days. It's also not as humid, and it's a crisp and refreshing air. So it's nothing like the East Coast, as the atmosphere environment is just less sticky. Now, I will have to say that the 2 months of the year during the late summertime in Seattle is probably some of the most enjoyable times of the year in any city. Just don't get tricked and assume that's normal, because at the end of the day, that's only 2 months of the year, and the remaining 10 months are going to be overcast. But who knows? Maybe global warming can make that all year round one day, and that's a bet that one can make. Let's talk about entertainment and outdoor activity. So when I think of entertainment and lifestyle in these two places, mainly because of the weather, the climate, and the geography, if you're one that enjoys hiking and biking, I think Seattle has some of the best available. Now, how about access to like skiing? So while the ski resorts in the Seattle metro area are not as famous as Lake Tahoe, the good part is that they're much closer to that area. So you can get to some decent skiing or snowboarding places in less than 2 hours, which is really incredible, because then your day trips are very easy. Now, a lot of people do those day trips to Lake Tahoe, but then again, it's like four plus hours going one way. Now, there are some negatives for Seattle, given it rains so much. Let's say 8+ months a year. A lot of the outdoor activities that you would want to do, like sports of tennis and golf, are a lot more difficult because it's not going to work that way. So if you enjoy those types of outdoor sports, you're going to much rather prefer the Bay Area, because we also have a lot of public facilities for that. So that's why people are playing tennis all year round. But if you're playing tennis in Seattle, you're going to be paying and getting some sort of club and indoor facility. Now, if you like boating, there are many places in San Francisco that have its own yacht club, but because of Seattle's just geography, you're going to have a lot more options out in Seattle when it comes to boating, whether it's on lakes or into the ocean. Now, what do you think? Have you lived in one or the other? Do you agree or disagree with these things? I try to keep it as just objective as possible. But I want to hear from you. What do you like and dislike about Seattle or the Bay? I know this video is controversial and all of these comparison videos always are, and that's why I did it. But nevertheless, if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in the Bay Area or even in Seattle, give me a call at 408-547-4590 or DM me at one of the links below. I'd love to have a conversation and go over some options with you. And don't forget, like and subscribe for more real estate tips and information.